So I'm continuing my series on the laws of different states as far as officiating at weddings. Particularly, I'm only really going to discuss states in which I have actually performed weddings. So I'm not planning to hit all 50 states, at least right away. Maybe someday I'll perform a wedding in each of the 50 states. That I don't know. But the next state I want to talk about is Connecticut. Now, one of the reasons I want to talk about Connecticut is there seems to be some confusion about Connecticut, which I don't understand where the confusion comes from exactly. I'm on different wedding websites, received a lead, now to pay to answer the lead, which is the reason why I didn't answer the lead, although I kind of feel guilty that I didn't. Maybe I could have asked them for the whatever $6-7 that it would cost to answer the lead for the information. I got a notice from one of these wedding websites. I think I actually got two, so I'm not sure if it was the same bride or if it was two different brides, but they said basically the same story. They said, their aunt is a pastor, but she's not registered in Connecticut, so they need someone to just sign the papers, which is a typical thing in places that require registration or that have strict laws. I do that quite often. Someone else is actually officiating at the ceremony, but let's say they're not registered in New York City, which requires registration, and they didn't have time to go through the registration process, or they were unable to. Virginia, same thing. Pennsylvania have a registration process, but they have very strict laws, and so therefore someone else is performing the ceremony, and a friend, a family member, or whatever it is, and I am signing the papers. And to make it legal, usually, just quickly, do you guys want to be married? And they'll say yes, and then I'll say, by the power recognizing me by Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, by the city of New York, whatever, as I'm pronouncing man and wife, or I could just say, you want to be married, and they say yes, and I say, okay, you're married, and then I sign the papers just to make it clear what the legal aspect is in the ceremony. Now, Connecticut has no such requirements. Connecticut just says, anybody who is an ordained clergy person, they can live in any state. That might be one of the reasons people are confused. They'll think, well, she lives in New Jersey. Can she officiate in Connecticut? Yes, if she's a regular pastor, absolutely. There's no question that in this story that this couple and the bride's aunt is a pastor. There's no reason for her not to be able to sign the paperwork in Connecticut and for it to be accepted, especially if she's an actual pastor in an actual church. She went to actual seminary. There's no question to that. So, of course, again, there's a lot of misinformation. People aren't aware of the laws. So that's one reason. Now, again, the question always comes up about the online ordinations, the Universal Life Church. So this morning I looked up the website of the judicial branch of the state of Connecticut, and they discussed this issue. They didn't make a definitive answer, but what they say is that it seems that there is very little case law concerning this in Connecticut, and there's no reason not to accept it. That ordination by Universal Life Church should be acceptable in Connecticut. Now, one thing that I have from my experience in Connecticut, I was asked to perform non-religious civil ceremony in Connecticut, but I am a clergy person, a rabbi. So the question was, so I mentioned this to the clerk, when I was clearing with the clerk before I did my first wedding in Connecticut a number of years ago, and I've done a few. I don't much care to go there for some reason. I don't know why. I love to go to Pennsylvania. Connecticut, I don't know what it is there. It's a nice state. I have no problems with it. I don't know what it is. I just don't like driving out there. I don't know. I live much closer to the Pennsylvania border, that's for sure. To go to Connecticut, I have to go over the Hudson River, pay a toll. So, anyway, but I do some weddings in Connecticut every now and then. And so then the question is, on the certificate, when you're filling out the paper, as there's in a few other states, they ask, is this a religious wedding or a civil wedding? And so what you have to put, if you are an ordained minister, meaning you're not a judge, you're not part of the government in Connecticut, you're an ordained clergy person, even whatever it is, Universal Life Church, whatever it is, you have to click off the little part that says religious. Now the question is, what if there's no religious aspect of the ceremony? Now, of course, if I'm doing a Jewish ceremony, it's obviously religious. If I'm doing a non-denominational ceremony and I mention, God bless you, or I maybe quote something from the Bible or something like that, same thing, it's obviously religious. What if the couple is totally not religious? They don't want you to even mention God bless. I mean, you could just quietly say it, but it's not something I would really suggest to do because I don't want to offend. It's not something I would necessarily do because I don't want to offend the couple. The customer's always right. It's basically, so I don't want to necessarily do that. But I will make them aware of the law that, this is a civil ceremony as far as the way the ceremony is being read, but because I'm a member of the clergy, I have to check the box on the wedding, on the marriage license that says religious. And usually they'll be okay with that. That's something perhaps I would mention even before I get hired, just to not offend the couple. You have the same thing, I know, in New York City and in Virginia, that you have to check off whether it's religious or civil. In Virginia, they told me it didn't really matter, but they said it's probably better to check the box that says religious if you're a member of the clergy, even if it's a non-religious ceremony. So that's basically what I've always done. But in Connecticut, they told me absolutely that the question is not about so much what the ceremony is, but rather the officiant. Is the officiant a religious officiant or a civil officiant? So anyway, on the website of the state of Connecticut's judicial branch, they had this discussion about the Universal Life Church, and they told a little bit of the history of it. The Universal Life Church has been around since the 50s. It's located in Modesto, California, and they're one of the first. There's many other similar online ordination mills. And I myself have ordained people, but I have, credentials that I require, basically that you share my faith and that you will not be violating any aspect of the Orthodox Jewish religion. When you perform weddings, you won't perform weddings that I wouldn't perform, basically. And then I will ordain someone either as a minister or as a cantor or something like that. I generally don't like to give rabbinical ordination except for people who already have it elsewhere. If someone's already ordained as a rabbi, then I'll also, bestow that title, a Ravamanic title, which can be given, by any ordained rabbi can bestow the title of Ravamanic. But I prefer not to give that. I prefer to only give the title of there are a lot of these websites that will ordain ministers online. So in the days before the internet, they used to, Universal Life Church used to advertise in the back of comic books. They've been around, like I said, for over 50 years. And it was brought up, different states. The Connecticut website mentioned that in the 1970s it was brought up. In New York, Virginia, and North Carolina had problems with it. Eventually made it to, what they didn't mention there is eventually it did make it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did find that the Universal Life Church was allowed to on it. The question as to whether the states have to recognize it, it's still kind of a gray area. What basically it seems is that as long as it's recognized in some form, like we said in Pennsylvania, the limitation is the congregational requirement for a non-denominational or non-religious ceremony, as opposed to the other places that, if the bride or the groom is a member of the Universal Life Church, so then the minister can provide the service. So therefore, it makes it easier when it's friends or family officiating. It makes it a little harder to make a business out of it. And personally, for my business, I like that, because I can say, well, you have to, really be eligible in Pennsylvania, and it's not so simple. And there actually have been marriages that have been annulled in Pennsylvania. The Connecticut website makes it clear that no, they never have annulled any marriage based on the credentials of the clergy. So therefore, it's should be totally fine to have the Universal Life Church weddings in Connecticut. In any, and for sure, the case, what I began the story of this video with, is the case of someone who's an actual real pastor. There should be no reason for them not to. One thing you have to know about Connecticut is that, in addition to this, that you have to check off if it's religious or civil, is that generally, I'm not sure if this is true in all parts of Connecticut, but wherever you got your marriage license, that's where you have to get married. You can't, like in New York, you can get the marriage license anywhere in New York, and get married pretty much anywhere in New York, except if you get the license in the city. I'm not so sure. In Connecticut, if you got your license in Hartford, Connecticut, you got to get married in the jurisdiction of Hartford, or so forth, wherever the jurisdiction is. And so the couple, this is more on the couple side, when they're getting their marriage license, they should know ahead of time where they're getting married, because it could cause problems. I had a homeless couple who, wanted to meet me somewhere else, and, because they couldn't afford to travel. I'm not going to say what I actually did in that case. I did my best to help them, and I did help them. But the law is that it has to be done in the place where, and I did officiate in the end, because I wanted to help them out. The homeless couple, it only took like $20. But the law in Connecticut is that you have to get married where you got your marriage license, and so that's the law. Also, Connecticut does not, as far as I know, might have changed since then, but I did a few weddings, Connecticut licenses in Connecticut, and they don't require witnesses, so you can just elope in Connecticut with no witnesses, so that makes it a little bit easier. I remember one wedding I did in Connecticut was quite interesting. It was the couple, they were from China, and he was a wedding photographer, the groom. He had a business as a photographer, and he actually photographed his own wedding he had nobody else there. Or maybe they took in a photographer to help out, an assistant to exactly help out. I don't remember now offhand. I do have the pictures, and it's on my Thumbtack profile. But that's the interesting thing about, it was just in their apartment in Connecticut, and they got all dressed up. It was just the two of them, maybe one other guest, although they also had a live hookup to China for their ceremony. So I remember they were reading things in China and then in Chinese, and it was being sent ahead to China. So whatever, I have a lot of interesting stories. One wedding, I don't remember if it was in Connecticut or Massachusetts. But I remember on the way back there was a park that had dinosaur footprints, fossils, and I was like, I should have stopped and looked at that, because I like dinosaurs. So that was one of the nice things about Connecticut. I don't know, I should maybe do more Connecticut weddings. I don't know, it just seems so far away. I don't know why. It's really not that far, but I haven't done that many, maybe probably less than 10 altogether weddings in Connecticut. But again, the main point of this video is to say that I don't know, I'm sure whoever was looking for someone to sign, they already found someone. Probably they already booked them, and they're doing this whole thing that is totally unnecessary. And I always feel bad when that happens, because I've had that. I found out later. I had a case like that. It was a couple in New York. And it was not far from where I was working, and I met them at the mall. And then they said, yeah, well, my father is a pastor, but he's in Georgia, and he came up, but we just want to get the marriage license signed, and then he's going to bless us. And I said, I felt bad. I said, if I would have known ahead of time, I would have explained the laws. If it was in New York City, in the 5 boroughs, that's a problem. But anywhere else in New York, he totally could have signed. There's no reason for him not to be able to sign. But again, a lot of people don't know the laws, and I really don't know of any state. I've looked into the laws in different states. I don't know any state that does not allow clergy from other states to perform weddings. Now, there might be caveats to how they can perform and what they need to do. There might be some hoops to go through to perform the wedding. Massachusetts, but there is. I can't think of any state that doesn't allow an officiant from another state or another country, for that matter. A lot of times people will have the rabbi come in from Israel and perform the wedding. So why shouldn't I don't know, what should be the problem there? So, all right, and again, of course, if you have to register, you have to register. I'm going to make another video about Massachusetts, because that's quite an interesting case. But New York, like I said before, if you have the opportunity to register in New York City, or in Virginia for that matter, chaperone, get it done with, because you never know, especially if you're a clergy person, you never know when you're going to have either an opportunity to do a wedding in New York or a need to do a wedding in New York. Especially, so many people get, in my community, rabbis, many rabbis are called to perform weddings in New York. So, get registered in New York City. I don't care if you're a rabbi in a synagogue in Nebraska or in Idaho, wherever it is. Get registered in New York City as soon as you have your congregation, and you can do it all online. Like I said, it's only like $14 or $15. Get that done with. But as far as Connecticut, which is the subject of this video, any clergy can officiate in Connecticut. For this couple that I mentioned, I've had to hire someone else, and it's a shame. I feel bad for them, because most likely someone will take advantage of them just to sign the papers, just to make whatever. Usually they'll charge like $200 for that,